I still remember the sound, not thunder from the heavens, but the earth itself breaking. When Mehmet's great cannon opened its iron mouth, the stones of the Theodosian walls shuddered like living things, dust leapt from every seam, and breath caught in our throats as if a giant hand had closed around the city. I was there, a gilder's apprentice who had traded gold leaf for a spear, standing above the Lycus Valley in the spring of 1453, watching Constantinople tremble one heartbeat at a time. We had known sieges, old men said, but never a storm like this. The Sultan was only 21, yet his army seemed to pour from the horizon. Tents like a second city, drums like a second pulse. He had bought himself monsters, guns cast by a Hungarian master, one so vast we called it the Basilica. When it roared, the ground under our boots went soft for a moment, as if the soil remembered it had once been clay. We stuffed torn masonry with sacks and gabions, drove oak beams into breached places, stacked barrels filled with sand and prayers. Women came in lines with stones in their aprons. Boys ran water skins to the guns and returned wide-eyed with the smoke sting still wet on their cheeks. Inside the walls we were poor and hungry and stubborn. Bakers thinned their loaves with barley and hope. Mosaics in half-ruined churches still caught the morning light and made it look like mercy. Greeks and Latins, who had argued for centuries about the right words for God, knelt shoulder to shoulder in Hagia Sophia. I was there the evening the emperor himself, Constantine, last of that long name, laid his sword at the foot of the altar and took communion with Venetians and Genoese and men who had once sworn they would never share a cup. The incense coiled in the blue light under the great dome, and beyond the doors the cannon grumbled like a distant storm that could no longer be prayed away. We had small victories. The chain across the Golden Horn held their galleys at first, a bright iron line against the water. We cheered from the sea walls when their prows stopped short and men cursed in languages that sounded like thrown stones. But Mehmet thought sideways. One dawn we woke to the impossible. Masts sprouting inside the horn like reeds after rain. He had greased planks and laid logs and dragged ships across the hill behind Galata in the night. The city drew in a breath then, a long, thin breath that never truly left our chests again. The days stretched, stitched together by cannon salvos and the creak of siege engines, by the hiss of arrows and the slap of ropes against towers. Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, made a wall of men out of fear and discipline along St. Romanus Gate. Where he stood, the stones seemed to stiffen. Fires bloomed and were smothered. We learned to count the beats between shots, to run while the basilica cooled its terrible throat, to duck when the Sultan's lighter guns began to chatter in chorus. At night their camp became a fallen constellation. Lamps clustered like stars upon the plain, and from it rose the muezzin's calls folding over one another like waves. From our side, the bells answered. Between those sounds, a silence grew that was not peace but exhaustion learning how to be courage. People told stories the way a mother rocks a child. Some promised an angel would lift the emperor in the last hour and carry him along the walls with a flaming sword. Some said a hidden gate, the Kirkaporta, opened by accident would doom us or save us, depending on who whispered. Others watched the moon. When it rose red one night, men crossed themselves in the streets and women wept without tears, as if the city had shown them its own blood and asked them to keep it secret. The final day began before there was a day to speak of. May 29th, and the darkness already full of movement. We felt them gathering in the ground. A tremor through our boots, and then the drums rolled until even the mortar seemed to hum. Torches came on like a field of fire, and the first wave advanced. Irregular troops with ladders and hooks, shouting, dying, shouting again. We hurled stones and boiling oil and bolts from the machines that still answered to Latin names. Bodies made new rungs on the ladders. The second wave pressed in before our arms had stopped shaking from the first. Smoke turned the air to cloth. I remember the sound of Giustiniani's breath when the shot struck him. How soft it was, like a man waking from sleep. The wound was not instantly mortal, but it was deep, and something in us tore when he let his men carry him from the breach. Rumor outran blood. Giustiniani is gone, someone shouted, and courage wavered as if a rope had been cut. The third wave, the Janissaries, the Sultan's own, came then, steady as rain. They climbed over the fallen, over us, over fear, their voices a single iron line. Allah Akbar, they cried, and from our lips the older cry rose, Kyrie eleison. The clash of those prayers in the dust and heat sounded like two seas colliding. At the St. Romanus gate the emperor fought with his Varangians and the last of the city guard. I saw a man in torn purple cast away what remained of a cloak and shout, "The city is lost, but I live!" He vanished into the press where swords and pikes knitted a new, red fabric, and the next time I looked for him all I saw was a heap of armor that might have been anyone's. Some swear his body was found among the humblest dead. Others swear marble took him in, and he waits, white and patient, under the walls. I only know that the double-headed eagle fell from the tower, and the crescent climbed in its place like a new moon entering a sky it would never leave. I ran with others through streets that had always felt broader, breathing smoke that tasted of cedar and paint and something older. Houses burned in their bones. A woman I knew for her laughter carried a stone image of St. George in both arms as if it were a child. At the Augusta Ion, the bronze horses watched a last time as if they understood they would be harnessed to another history. Bells pealed once more, a thin, defiant thread, and then went dead, the ropes snatched away. At Hagia Sophia the doors had been barred. A sea of people pressed inside, beneath the great round heaven of the dome, candles stitching a trembling galaxy along the marble floor. Priests sang as if the words themselves might turn to stone and hold. When the doors splintered and iron crashed on oak, the hymn rose sweeter, the way a man sometimes becomes kinder in his last breath. Soldiers poured forward, steel flashing in the candlelight, and the singing was swallowed, not broken, and for an instant I believed what the oldest of us had always said, that a priest at the altar would be led by an angel into the wall itself, the liturgy unfinished, to step out again when God decided we had learned enough. By noon dust ruled the air. The city of Constantine changed masters with the same fierce dignity with which an old tree keeps its shape in a new wind. The Sultan entered not like a boy who had won a game, but like a man who knew the weight of his prize. He rode to Hagia Sophia and dismounted and looked up at the dome that had underwritten an empire, and I heard him speak a phrase whose meaning I did not know then but understood from the softness in his voice, that God is one. He ordered the call to prayer, and the building that had crowned emperors became a mosque in the space between two breaths. The mosaics were veiled in plaster as if someone were tucking the faces of saints to sleep. I lived, though I had not earned the right more than the dead man beside me. Perhaps I was spared to keep a small fire on a long night. I carried out neither relic nor coin. I carried the sound of the guns in my ears, the grit of plaster between my teeth, the feel of the wall's last shiver under my palms. Years later, when the wind out of the Bosphorus rises at dusk, I still hear the drums and the two prayers meeting in the dark. I still see women lifting stones and children handing up water skins, the emperor's bare head vanishing like a candle cupped by the wind. People ask if the city truly died that day. I tell them no. Walls can fall, bells can be silenced, domes can change their prayers. But cities are also made of breath and memory. I have seen the conqueror's banners fade and other banners take their place. Seen markets bustle again where we once bled. Heard laughter spill out of courtyards rebuilt with the same stubborn brick. I have walked past Hagia Sophia and felt the old hymn humming through the call to prayer like a river under ice. Conquest is loud. Endurance is quiet. The first writes its name in fire. The second writes it in the hearts of men and refuses to be erased. If you ask me what remains, it is this. A red moon rising over domes turned gray by ash. A chain laid across water and ships that learned impossibly to cross land. A general's soft intake of breath when iron found him. A boy sultan standing humbled in a temple he had taken. An emperor who died where he had promised to die. Two great names for God hung in the same air, and the knowledge, hard and clean as a sharpened stone, that the city did not surrender. We lost our walls. We did not lose ourselves.